به سوی آزادی، گردهمایی بزرگ مقاومت ایران، پاریس، ویلپنت، اول تیر 1392، 22 ژوئن. به مناسبت 30 خرداد، عید آغاز مقاومت، روز شهیدان و زندانیان سیاسی، سال روز تأسیس ارتش آزادی بخش ملی.
My name is Linda Chavez. I served in the White House on the senior staff under President Ronald Reagan. It is a great honor and pleasure to be with you today. This is the second year that I have been at this gathering in Paris. And I have to tell you that watching the news last week as the world media was searching for some sign of democracy in Iran, they were searching in the wrong place, because that sign is here in this hall. You are the future of the country of Iran, and no man who was handpicked to put on a ballot by the mullahs who control every aspect of life in Iran can truly be said to represent that country. We have in this room the future of the country of Iran, of freedom and democracy. And we have gathered today here dignitaries from all over the world. Now, why I have been chosen as the person who has the most difficult job in the room, I don't know. And it is going to be my duty today to remind those dignitaries who have come that every voice wants to be heard today, because there are so many here who want to show their support for the Iranian people and their support for President-elect Madam Rajabi. I also want to mention that this is not just being seen in this room. There are tens of thousands of you already in this room, but there are millions others who are watching and who are listening. The first person that I have the privilege of introducing to this audience this afternoon is somebody who frankly needs no introduction, not only in this room, but any place in the world. He is the former mayor of New York City. He is America's mayor. He is the Honorable Rudy Giuliani.
Thank you. Thank you. Very impressive to see all these people, so many, 100,000 here to celebrate liberty and freedom and to fight for it. Madam Rajavi, all of the lovers of freedom that are here today, I said two years ago that Camp Liberty was going to be a concentration camp and worse, a killing field. I am very, very sad to say that I've turned out to be correct. It's become exactly that, a concentration camp and a place where people are killed without any regard for dignity, human life, or decency. People abandoned by the United Nations, and even worse, abandoned by my country, the United States, that promised them protection. Shame on the United Nations. Shame on Martin Kobler, and shame on all of those who promised protection and are now refusing to give it. Shame on all of you! Where's the leader to say to the Ayatollahs? Where's the leader to say to Maliki? Where's the leader to say to Rouhani, no more killing! No more killing! No more killing! in the name of decency, free the people of Camp Liberty and Camp Ashraf. Free them now. No more talk. No more diplomacy. No more lies. Free them as you promised to do. I believe that the most honorable thing to do would be to take all those people who are now at Liberty and Ashraf, and because of the promises made by the United States of America, by my country, I believe it is our obligation to take all of them and bring them to the United States of America immediately. That would be the right thing to do. That would be the honorable thing to do. That would be the decent thing to do. But since we've abandoned decency and honesty, then I believe the only practical thing to do is to return them immediately to Camp Ashraf, where they can protect themselves. Since we can't seem to protect them, at least let them go to Camp Ashraf, where they can protect themselves from the rockets and from the killing that is going on in Iraq. Let me say to the people that are listening now or in the future in Camp Liberty and those remaining in Ashraf, you have my undying admiration. We admire your courage. We admire your love of freedom. We admire your love of country. We admire you greatly. And when the day comes, and it will come, that Iran is a free country again, that Iran is a decent country again, that Iran is allowed to live up to its great history, when that day comes, you, the people in Liberty and Ashraf, you will be the mothers and the fathers of freedom. You will be the heroes. I believe that now, unfortunately, a nuclear Iran is becoming almost a thing that will happen no matter what we do. The election of Hassan Rouhani brings it, in my view, closer rather than further away. And let me explain why. The propaganda machine describing him as a reformer is hideous. This man is no reformer. You know he is not a reformer. If he's a reformer, we're better having a radical than a reformer. All the candidates in this prior election were approved, Ayatollah Khamenei. All of them were approved. He wouldn't have been approved if he were truly a moderate, whatever that means. Rouhani served on the Supreme National Security Council since 1991. He has been one of its most important members. He was a personal representative of the present Ayatollah. Do you know how many people have been slaughtered? Do you know how many people have been killed? Do you know how many people have been tortured? And do you know how many people have been imprisoned while he has sat for 16 years on that council? Thousands and thousands and thousands of people. The blood of those people are on Rouhani's hands. He is no reformer. He is a killer. He is a murderer. Wake up. He sat on that council in 1993, in August of 1993, when the council approved killing what turned out to be over 80 Jewish people and injuring over 800 other people in Argentina. because Argentina refused to supply Iran with nuclear material. According to the Argentinian prosecutor, Mr. Rouhani was part of that decision, was a critical part of that decision. The blood of those 80 people and the 800 people that were slaughtered in Argentina is on Rouhani's hands. It's time that we speak realistically about what has to be done. If Mr. Rouhani is a reformer, then he can prove it to us. Here's how he can prove it to us. He can release the political prisoners that are in Iran immediately. He can give rights to women, and he can abandon the nuclear program. Since that's not going to happen, and you know it's not going to happen, where does our hope reside? Where does our hope for freedom and decency and democracy and freedom lie? With the Ayatollah? With the mullahs? With the murderer Rouhani? No! It lies with you, with Madame Rajavi, with the MEK, with people who believe in freedom, with people who believe in democracy, with people who believe in a non-nuclear Iran. I conclude by speaking directly to the people at Ashraf and Liberty. We love you. We love you because we admire you so much. We wonder if we could handle, with the same dignity and the same strength and the same commitment, what you've had to handle. But we know why you're doing it. You're doing it not only for your own freedom, but for the freedom of your children and for the freedom of your great nation, Iran. I tell you now, and I say to you, all decent people are with you. It doesn't matter what their political leanings are. It doesn't matter what their ethnic background, race, or religion. We're all with you. We are sitting with you in Ashraf right now. We only hope and we wish that we have the strength and courage that you have. But our admiration for you is endless. God bless you, and God will lead us to a free and a decent Iran because of you, the people of Ashraf, and because of you and Madam Rajavi. Thank you, and God bless you.
Next, it is my great honor and privilege to introduce the 81st Attorney General of the United States and a former federal judge, Judge Michael Mukasey.
Mrs. Rajavi, and brothers and sisters who love freedom and yearn for a free Iran. When we met in past years and MEK members were in Ashraf, we always spoke of the danger from Iraq, from Iranian agents in Iraq. The MEK at those times was still on the U.S. list of foreign terrorist organizations, a designation that never had any basis in fact and was made purely as an accommodation to the mullahs in a misguided and, of course, unsuccessful attempt to entice them into negotiations by designating their principal opposition, the MEK, as terrorists. We were told solemnly by the U.S. government that moving away from Ashraf to liberty was something that was in MEK's interest. We were told by representatives of our State Department that being near the Baghdad airport would make it easier to get people out to other countries. And we were also assured that there was an emergency plan. It was secret, it couldn't be disclosed, but we were told that there was a plan if an emergency developed. Yet now, when MEK finally pushed in the courts of the United States against State Department opposition and was removed from the list of foreign terrorist organizations. And now that MEK has done what the U.S. government asked and moved its members to liberty, the danger looks greater than ever. Remember how this started. MEK members gave up their weapons in 1993 when the United States invaded Iraq. They were vetted, all of them, by the FBI and found to have no terrorist connections. They were given personal, individual guarantees by U.S. representatives, including the U.S. military, that they would be treated as protected persons under the Geneva Conventions. Even as their situation has gotten progressively worse, these assurances continued. We are now at a crisis point. A new president has been elected in Iran. And as you heard from Mayor Giuliani, when we are certain to hear from our State Department that we must be accommodating to this person because he is a moderate. Rouhani, a moderate? As you heard, he could not have stood for election without the approval of Khamenei and the other mullahs. He comes out of the security services. What can be done in the face of that? Well, what can be done in the face of that is to take inspiration from the residents of the people who are living in a place ironically called liberty that is really concentration camp liberty, and tell them that they are not forgotten and that they will not be forgotten. Those of us who were enlisted by our State Department to help convince the residents of Ashraf must bear some special responsibility in this crisis. And I'll tell you, I was there when that happened. And I can vouch for the fact that, as Mrs. Rajavi told you, Kobler asked very specific questions about Masoud Rajavi, and it made our blood run cold. But I'm also here to tell the residents and our own State Department that I recognize my own responsibility in this matter, and I'm not going to shrink from it or shirk it. I promise you, and I promise them, that I will not stop speaking out until the residents of Camp Liberty are free to rejoin the struggle that we're all in, and that is the struggle for a free Iran. That I pledge to you and to them. Thank you very much.
Now it is my pleasure to introduce a woman who has served in many capacities here in France. She is the former French Minister of Defense, Minister of Justice, and Minister of Home Affairs. I introduce to you Michèle Alliot-Marie.
Madame la Présidente, chère et courageuse Mariam Rajavi, et vous tous qui voulez vous battre pour votre liberté, pour la liberté de votre nation, pour la liberté de votre peuple, je vous le dis, non, il n'y a pas de fatalité à l'injustice. Non, il n'y a pas de fatalité à la violence. Non, il n'y a pas de fatalité au terrorisme. Non, il n'y a pas de fatalité à la guerre, tant qu'il y aura des hommes et des femmes comme vous pour célébrer et pour porter les valeurs de la liberté, les valeurs de la dignité des hommes et des femmes. Oui, oui, c'est vous qui pouvez donner du courage à ceux qui, aujourd'hui, subissent la dictature, subissent la violence, subissent des meurtres. Oui, ils comptent sur vous, sur chacune et chacun d'entre vous, pas seulement sur les responsables politiques, mais dans la vie, chacun est responsable de l'action collective. Chacun peut apporter quelque chose. Alors, soyons lucides. Nous sommes dans un monde très complexe. Nous sommes dans un monde dangereux. Aujourd'hui et dans l'avenir, il y a des risques de tension. Il y a des risques de guerre. Des risques de guerre parce qu'il y a de plus en plus d'armes nucléaires et que la prolifération fait monter le risque. De plus en plus de risques de guerre parce qu'il y a de plus en plus d'intolérance et d'intégrisme. Alors oui, la communauté internationale a besoin de tous les pays et principalement des grands pays pour aider à stabiliser le monde et pour aider à protéger la paix. Et votre pays, l'Iran, devrait jouer un rôle essentiel par son histoire, par sa culture, par la richesse des gens qui composent ce pays. C'est vrai que la poursuite du programme nucléaire, qui est un danger pour la région et pour le monde, conduit à des sanctions qui affaiblissent l'Iran. Et c'est vrai aussi que vouloir poursuivre un programme nucléaire en dehors de toute la légalité internationale, c'est quelque chose qui empêche l'Iran de jouer son rôle. Et ce qui empêche aussi l'Iran de jouer son rôle, c'est une vision des rapports des hommes et des femmes, c'est une vision de la religion qui est intégriste et qui ne permet pas de reconnaître les valeurs de la démocratie. Alors oui, chère Mariam Rajavi, nous avons besoin, vous avez besoin, le monde a besoin d'un Iran qui soit démocratique, d'un Iran qui respecte la liberté d'expression et la liberté de penser, d'un Iran qui n'accepte pas que ceux qui sont dans le camp Liberty puissent être régulièrement bombardés, puissent être régulièrement agressés, puissent être régulièrement tués. Ce n'est pas acceptable dans un monde tel que le nôtre. Ce n'est pas acceptable dans un monde où on croit à la liberté, où on croit aux droits de l'homme. Et c'est cela que nous tous, nous sommes venus vous dire aujourd'hui. Nous voulons d'un Iran qui respecte les principes que vous avez énoncés tout à l'heure et qui sont la base d'un grand pays démocratique qui pourra jouer tout son rôle dans le monde. Oui, ensemble, nous voulons pour nous, nous voulons pour nos enfants, nous voulons pour les hommes et les femmes du monde la paix, la démocratie, une politique qui soit au service de l'épanouissement de chacune et de chacun. Alors soyez-en assurés, ici nous sommes venus, nous tous les responsables politiques, vous dire que nous sommes et nous serons toujours aux côtés de ceux qui veulent lutter pour la liberté, qui veulent lutter pour la tolérance, qui veulent lutter pour que les hommes et les femmes aient un avenir meilleur en Iran et dans le monde.
It's now my great pleasure to introduce to you a great patriot, the former National Security Advisor to President Barack Obama, General James Jones.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and bonjour à tous. First, let me offer my congratulations to Mrs. Rajavi and to all of you for what you represent today by your attendance at this very, very important event. An event which symbolizes the struggle for democracy and freedom for the people of Iran and also, by example, oppressed people everywhere. I'm proud to add my voice of support to you and to your cause. Ladies and gentlemen, we still live in a dangerous world, but it is a world in which, hopefully, tyrants and tyranny are on the decline and freedom and liberty is on the rise. The Middle East is still the epicenter of most of that danger, and today's event is symbolic of the here and now of that danger. And as we all know, Iran is still the dominant source of instability and danger in the region. By the outreach of its power and influence to Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and other countries, and through its use of proxies to destabilize the entire region, and through the steadfast advancement of its plan to acquire nuclear weapons, Iran's goals and vision are unmistakable. Within the context of what is now a regional struggle, the leadership and the vision and the hope that all of you represent serve notice to Tehran that democracy is coming and that it is unstoppable. So to be clear, Iran's so-called election of Hassan Rouhani will not change the Supreme Leader's vision or his direction for the regime. We should be clear on this. Global continued sanctions should be maintained, and nations who do not cooperate with an enhanced sanctions protocol should both be named and shamed. The ultimate outcome of the crisis in Syria is critical to Iran's future and to the hope of freedom-loving people everywhere. If Syria's advocates for democracy prevail, Iran loses. It's as simple as that. Pro-democracy movement must be supported and must be helped. Neither the United States nor Europe can sit this one out. The stakes are high and the impact is global. In 2004, the United States-led multinational force designated the people of Camp Ashraf as protected persons. In 2009, the new government of Iraq accepted this responsibility for their security, and this responsibility and the way they have chosen to enact their responsibility has been an abject, shameful failure. So in a geostrategic sense, the latest cowardly attack of June 15th on Camp Liberty signals the real and persistent fear that the regime has with regard to your noble resolve and your determination. On a more human and humanitarian level, it represents the continuing need for all nations to join in effective condemnation of these now multiple attacks on unarmed men, women, and children. So the world, with the regimes in Baghdad and Tehran, now recognize that the people of Ashraf and Liberty are not terrorists. Rather, they are the victims of brutal repression because of their ideas, their values, and those that you hold and we all hold as well. And that is for a free and democratic Iran to come sooner rather than later. Tehran knows that words and ideas are more powerful than any weapon, even a nuclear weapon. So we are with you in this cause. May God give you the strength and courage on your path to victory. Thank you very much.
I'd like now to introduce you to the former Prime Minister of Spain, neighboring Spain. He is the Honorable José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero.
Gracias. Muchas gracias a todos. Gracias. Es un honor para mí compartir este momento hoy con la comunidad iraní fuera de Irán. Y estoy aquí para compartir vuestras aspiraciones, vuestros sueños y vuestros objetivos. El pueblo persa no merece menos. El futuro de la democracia en Irán está en manos del pueblo iraní y esto significa, por supuesto, que está en vuestras manos. Vuestra fuerza y empeño son fundamentales para la esperanza. Y quiero expresar mi preocupación más profunda por la falta de seguridad que existe en el campo Libertad y apoyar la reivindicación de los residentes de volver al campo Arraz. No puede haber excusas. Ni la tradición, ni la profesión de una fe religiosa, ni la seguridad interior, ni los errores de otras naciones pueden avalar la discriminación de los seres humanos y la limitación de las libertades. La democracia no tiene por qué ser un invento occidental. Es una exigencia de la condición humana. Hay culturas distintas, religiones diversas, filosofías distintas, pero siempre hay que promover una conciencia sin dominación ni exclusiones. La democracia plena no suele ser un camino fácil y a veces es largo y duro. La democracia es una forma política relativamente joven. Pocas naciones disfrutan de ella desde hace un siglo e incluso en Europa occidental este buen sistema de gobierno existe en algunos países solo desde hace unas décadas. Pero tenemos razones para pensar que los ideales democráticos ya están prevaleciendo. Hace menos de medio siglo los países democráticos eran minoría, hoy son mayoría. Países como Libia, Egipto, Túnez y otros buscan su propio destino y su destino no puede ser otro que consolidar sus incipientes democracias. Tenemos que insistir que la democracia incluye todas las ideas, todas las religiones y todas las identidades para vivir juntos como iguales. Si una religión o una ideología o una nacionalidad impone sus propias reglas, acabará excluyendo a la democracia y haciendo que los derechos humanos sean impracticables. Y hay un ejemplo muy significativo. La dominación y discriminación en contra de las mujeres es la peor expresión del absolutismo. Y aún hoy, millones de mujeres padecen una dominación intolerable. Nada justifica el sometimiento de las mujeres. Ningún dios, ninguna fe, ninguna bandera. Nada justifica el sometimiento de las mujeres. Por ello, en defensa de los derechos humanos y para el progreso de las democracias, en Oriente y Occidente, en el norte y en el sur, tenemos que trabajar por las mujeres, o para ser más exactos, con las mujeres. No puede haber primavera no puede haber primavera hasta que todas las mujeres tengan su parte en la historia. Por ello, el papel tan importante que las mujeres desempeñan en la oposición iraní es una señal de la fuerza de su movimiento y es muy alentador. Felicidades, señora Mariam Rajavi, por llevar este movimiento. Los derechos humanos y la democracia crean sociedades más aptas para la paz. Y la paz es la tarea. Trabajar por la paz significa reducir el espacio del fanatismo. Y Oriente Próximo necesita paz y no proyectos nucleares. Necesitamos alianzas sólidas para que en países como Siria se ponga fin a la crueldad y el terror. Señoras y señores, amigos y amigas, hay algunas certezas indudables. La fe en la libertad, la dignidad de los seres humanos, los derechos fundamentales, nuestra igualdad básica. Estas certezas son de todas las culturas, de todas las religiones, de todas las identidades, y trabajar por ellas es la mejor opción que tenemos, porque la historia tiene todavía hacia nosotros una gran deuda: el triunfo de la libertad para la gran mayoría de los hombres y mujeres de la Tierra. Y existe un lugar donde la deuda histórica de la libertad y de la democracia está pendiente: la antigua tierra de Persia. La antigua tierra de Persia. Muchas gracias. Suerte por la libertad, por la democracia y hasta la próxima. Gracias.
Now it is my honor to introduce to you Army General Hugh Shelton, former Chairman of the United States Joint Chiefs of Staff. General.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Madam Rajavi and other distinguished guests, of which I am very honored to be among here today. Ladies and gentlemen, and especially those friends of ours that are watching today from Camp Ashraf and Camp Liberty, Salam. Today is a time for both celebration and a time for mourning. 4 years ago, we worked together under the courageous leadership of Madam Rajavi, using every tool at our disposal to get the wrongful designation of the MEK as a terrorist group removed. And finally, we won. And today, we pause to celebrate that monumental victory. The right road is seldom the easy road. And in this case, it was the hard road, but we fought and we achieved victory. But that victory was less sweet than it might have otherwise been, due to the fact that part of the delisting of the residents involved the voluntary move of the residents from Camp Ashraf to Liberty. And of course, our U.S. State Department quickly changed the name to Harai when they recognized that the place did not approximate any form of the word liberty. But with both the U.S. and UN assurances for their safety, some 3,100 residents made that move to Camp Liberty in January of last year. So now, let us review the facts. The United States, yes, the United States, not the European Union, not the UN, at this point has made two guarantees. First, the protection of the Ashraf residents when they agreed to disarm in 1994. And secondly, the United States guaranteed their safety when they agreed to move from Camp Ashraf to the concentration camp-like facility called Camp Liberty. Today, the United States is clearly in breach of its treaty and international obligations, as well as written guarantees that the United States provided each resident of Camp Ashraf in 2004 when the United States promised to protect them until their final disposition. Today, the Obama administration's shocking indifference toward the dire humanitarian situation at Liberty is downright shameful. It pains me to see my government turn its back and to display such indifference, and most of all, to ignore its commitments and its promises. That is not the American way. And it's not like that we don't know that this is a catastrophe waiting to happen at the hands of an Iranian-controlled Maliki government. The first rocket attack, as we know, occurred last February, and the latest occurred just a week ago today. But that's not the full story. The sorry state of affairs at Liberty, lack of proper medical treatment, constant and continuous inhumane harassment at the hands of the Iraqis, preventing the delivery of foodstuffs, preventing the removal of sewage, and hundreds of other harassing techniques show the Iraqi army and the Maliki government for what they really stand for. It is a government and an army that excels in harassing women, children, and the infirm. The United States must quit passing the buck. Secretary Kerry, the buck stops with you and President Obama. And talking about buck passing, I noted in Secretary Kerry's statement issued immediately after the rocket attack, he said, and I quote, "We remain absolute. The United States remains committed to assisting the government of Iraq and UNAMI in implementing the December 25, 2011 agreement to quickly relocate the residents of Camp Hariya outside Iraq. We must find a permanent and long-term solution that ensures their safety." End of quote. Notice how he very quickly passed the blame to the United Nations, to UNAMI, and to Iraq. What about the United States' commitments and promises? He did not address those. And so after 18 months of living in squalor-like conditions in so-called Camp Liberty, all the promises and commitments made by the United States, including the Obama administration, stand still. Let's review. More Liberty residents have been killed or injured in the so-called Camp Liberty than have been resettled. We must all continue to pressure an ineffective UN and UNAMI, and including the Secretary General, to get personally involved and not send in another, what in my opinion was a lackey like Kobler. The Obama administration needs to forego issuing Casper milquetoast comments and get tough with the Iraqis. Quit calling for the Iraqis to identify the terrorists and call a spade a spade. The Iraqis are either the terrorists or they are supportive of the terrorists. Either way, the Iraqis must be held accountable for every action which takes place on their soil. For Kerry and Obama, use your economic tool to get their attention, and don't be afraid to use ultimatums. One thing we know about bullies is they understand either ultimatums or force. The U.S. promises and commitments are still as valid today as the day that they were written and must be honored. Finally, to the residents of Liberty and Ashraf, continue to hang tough. The large gathering that we have here today from all over the world and the voices that you hear speaking today on your behalf, combined with Madam Rajavi's superb leadership, are indicators that help is on the way. Then we can get on with the real business of getting the tyrannical and theocratic leadership of Iran replaced with a government based on the democratic principles laid out by Madam Rajavi. Then and only then will we declare victory. Thank you very much.
I'd like now to introduce to you another face that is familiar to you and someone who knows intimately the situation in Iraq. He is, of course, General George Casey, who served as Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army from 2007 to 2011 and served as the Commanding General Multinational Force in Iraq from 2004 to 2007. General.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back here with you for the second year in a row, and I've been asked to speak about my personal experiences in Iraq with both the MEK and with the Iranian regime. But first, congratulations, Madam Rajavi, and to all of you for succeeding in the removal of the MEK from the U.S. terrorist list. It's a tribute to the perseverance and the persistence of this organization. But candidly, based on my experience, it should have been done a long time ago. I was in Iraq in 2004 when the MEK were granted protected status. I closely monitored their activities for the almost 3 years that I was in Iraq. I received weekly reports from my generals who are familiar to some of you, Generals Miller, Brandenburg, and Gardner. I can tell you that the MEK never posed a problem for the multinational force, and that Camp Ashraf was always uneventful. Therefore, I watched with grave concern the events of 2009, 2011, and the recent mortar attacks. And it's clear to me that our work with the MEK is long from finished. The men and women at Camp Liberty are still at risk. The United Nations, the U.S. government, and the Iraqi government have all agreed that the MEK must be protected. They must see that this is done. More must be done, and more must be done quickly, particularly by the Maliki government in Iraq. They have to improve force protection at Camp Liberty. The MEK has continuously lived up to their end of the bargain. We owe them their security, and we owe them their future. Now, let me just take these last few minutes here to talk about the role that the Iranian regime played in destabilizing Iraq. And while it was 6 years ago, I believe it is a harbinger of things to come for the region. I've seen firsthand the brutality and the destructive nature of the Iran's role inside Iraq. And as I've thought about this, 4 things from my time there about the Iranian regime are crystal clear to me. First of all, the regime actively used terror to accomplish its political objectives. Secondly, their training and equipping of Iraqi militias was a major factor in sustaining the sectarian violence that racked Iraq in 2006 and 2007. Third, this regime is directly responsible for the killing of hundreds of coalition forces and thousands of Iraqis. And lastly, because of those things, they richly deserve their designation as a state sponsor of terror. Now, going into Iraq, we believe that Iran's goals were to see a friendly regime seated in Iraq. And they also wanted the U.S. government to fail in our efforts to build a stable democracy in Iraq. And they fostered instability in Iraq through the training and equipping of terrorist organizations. We saw from the beginning that there was a close connection between the Quds Force and the Shia militias. But we didn't really begin to see the full impact of Iran's influence until after the bombing of the Al-Askari Mosque in Samarra in February of 2006. As our intelligence got better, as we conducted more raids on Iranian-backed militias, we discovered a particular type of improvised explosive device that was handmade in Iran. We discovered the latest rocket-propelled grenades and mortars and rockets that had writing on them in Farsi and had the dates which they were made. So it was clear that they had come recently from Iran. By mid-2006, there was no doubt that Iran was providing weapons and equipment to terrorist organizations inside Iraq. We saw another troubling trend in late 2006. It appeared to us that Iraqi militia backed by Iran were pushing Iraqis out of their neighborhoods in Baghdad to increase their control of the city. We confirmed this in December of 2006 when we captured 6 Quds Force operators in an operations cell in Baghdad. In this cell, there was a command center, and on that wall was a map. And on the map were color-coded sections of Baghdad, and it was color-coded by sectarian groups. On the map were arrows showing the potential movement of these populations. It was immediately crystal clear to us that Iran was purposely and directly fomenting sectarian violence to destabilize Iraq. So what should you take from all this? History is only as important as a guide for the future. I can tell you that this regime will not stop in its support of terror, and they will continue to use terror to accomplish their political objectives and to spread instability across the Middle East. When you combine this with their continued pursuit of nuclear weapons, I believe that this regime presents an unacceptable threat both to the region and to the international community. And I can think of no other case when a democratic opposition to an existing regime is more warranted. So I applaud you for your efforts, and I wish you every success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Governor Richardson, former governor of New Mexico, also the U.S. representative to the United Nations.
Thank you very much. You know, the recent presidential election in Iran, do you think it was a legitimate election? It was not legitimate because there was no viable opposition. They didn't even let Rafsanjani run. He's been one of the pillars of the regime since its inception, and he was qualified. What does this mean, disqualifying somebody like Rafsanjani? It means that the regime is weak, vulnerable. It cannot tolerate even one of its own people of Iran for the opposition. What this shows is that all of the power in Iran is in the hands of the supreme leader. The president is simply in charge of some logistical work and nothing more. And this president is no moderate. He is the top nuclear negotiator of a nuclear Iran. He is not a moderate. The litmus test for Iran is clear. Freedom of expression, freedom of political parties, release all political prisoners, stop the nuclear program, and stop supporting the Syrian dictator. So, what should be done? The answer is simple. The time is now for regime change. Now is the time to support the Iranian people in their quest for freedom and democracy. Now is the time to support the resistance movement under Mrs. Rajani's leadership. That's what is needed. Why now is the time? First, the MEK is no longer part of the American terrorist list. Delisting was a great achievement, and we celebrate it. But now we have to move forward. What should be our next goal? The next goal should be regime change. The next goal should be an effort to advance forward. So what we're saying to the international community, to all the leaders that are here, to all the countries represented, we are saying we need regime change, and this is the time to support the MEK. Support the MEK. The time of the mullahs is coming to an end. Now is your time, the people of Iran's time. Now is the time to change the regime. We will support you and make sure that our government and all our governments side with you. And now is the time for the international community to support the people of liberty and do everything possible for their security while they're still in Iraq. Vive la résistance iranienne! Que viva la resistencia de Irán! Long live the Iranian resistance!